Fire Radio.
And so there's no introduction needed. We're just going because we're already been talking stories and we're already telling. Ray Tremer Jr., Ray Tremer Sr., or I'm sorry, the third, excuse me. I was going up. I got to go down. Fellas, thanks for joining me, man. This is cool. So we already been chatting and we already lost like 5 minutes of good conversation because I didn't hit the record button. And I should know by now that every time I do this show, as soon as we enter the room, I should be recording because the stuff that comes out in the beginning that I never capture is probably some of the best stuff. But we were talking about, now we're going to get into both your stories. You're both career firemen. Ray Jr., Ray, you are retired out of the FDNY. Ray the third, the younger generation, he's currently a career fireman. So I want to get into both your careers, but I think really the beginning and the dynamic duo that you two are is what really is the appeal for me. And like we were saying before we hit record, I love my relationship with my father, and a lot of it has to do with my volunteer firehouse and watching and growing up there as a kid, being a legacy fireman and making him proud and following in those big shoes. And I know that you guys have a lot of that. And so, Big Ray, maybe you can start the story for me. I mean, a little bit about you and so on. And then we'll follow that legacy conversation about what it was like, Ray the third, for growing up in that house.
Well, I'll back it up even earlier.
Yeah.
My dad was a detective sergeant in organized crime in New York City.
Oh.
So I was the family.
What years was that?
I think he went from 52 to 88.
Oh, the heyday.
35 and a half.
The heyday of organized crime.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Holy
yeah, like you go on Netflix and you watch these serial killer and a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah.
You see on the collar, OCCB, Organized Crime Control Bureau, which I love that series that's out now because they use the right language. And the cast of characters that I grew up with coming around the house, like his driver was another sergeant. This guy, Frankie Cognetta, they called him Snake. Big arms, tattoos, earrings. He had 40-something kills as a mercenary before he became a cop.
Gosh, yeah.
But that was the 50s, 60s, 70s cops. It was blue bloods.
Sure.
So unfortunately, when I took the test, I took it in 79. I was number 326 on a list of 60,000.
For what, police or fire?
Police.
Police, okay.
And first day of medicals, first 400 they called, go up, and they failed everybody because of affirmative action, except for certain people.
Right.
So it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. Year and a half later, it's all cleared up, and you just have a chip on your spine. Oops, we made a mistake. And it's the classic story. Within a week, the troopers, police, and fire all call me.
Yes.
So now, I'm not going to be trooper. Screw that. I'm not going to go live up in Newport's. And my father's like, you're going to become a cop, right? And I took a marker and I wrote, F you on it.
Oh, yikes.
He's like, seriously? He's I'm senior sergeant and whatever you want. And my father didn't ask for anything from anybody.
Right.
He was just a really quiet guy, 6 foot, 285, 52 jacket, big opposing guy that said nothing.
Would have loved to have known where that height went,
Right. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody has to know.
It's his mother's fault. It's not mine.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I don't want any part of it. He's like, seriously? He's like, no. I said, I'm going to become a fireman. Squat when you pee. You're going to be a caveman. What are you going to do? Staten Island? I had to hear it all.
And what was it? When was that? That was what, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around there?
42 years ago, coming up this Monday, January 7th, I got sworn in.
Okay.
Did it in the Fashion Institute in Manhattan. And then on the 9th, I started at Randall's Island for the massive 5.5-week academy course.
Yeah. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the city?
Staten Island.
Staten Island. Okay.
Staten Island boy. Which Staten Island was all cops, firemen, sanitation.
Sure.
You either got a city job, went to college, or went to jail. I mean, that's pretty much the way it was back then.
Right.
So going to the academy, and the funny part about the academy is they bust your chops. You're not making any money. And so 1982, we had this one Lieutenant Sacramento. He made a mistake. Everything was $1 in the burn center can, because that's a big thing in New York. Put any extra change in there, and it supports the families and everything. And The short of it all is, we had a party day before graduation, and one guy got sent furthest from home. He said he's a $2 penalty tomorrow. I'm like, oh, who is it? No, don't worry about it. You know him. Sure enough,
Yep.
78 guys sitting there. Asshole, stand up. What? Tremer, stand up. You going to 69 engine? What do I know? I'm from 22-year-old idiot from Staten Island. Harlem. I guess I had this look on my face. He's like, you don't even fucking know where Harlem is. I'm like, nope.
Not only that, but it's a premier engine company throughout the entire FDNY, right? 69.
Harlem Hilton.
Yeah, right.
Truck, Neary. I went there. It was only a few months after the rope broke where Frisbee and Fitzpatrick died.
Yeah.
And he thought he was screwing me, but he didn't know. Father, it's the greatest gift he probably ever gave me, because they threw me to the fire with these maniacs that I thought back then. And
well, the early 80s, right? I mean, that is still the heyday of fire. There's still a lot of fire happening in 82.
If you didn't go to a fire a day,
yeah,
it was a slow day. I mean, I had night tours where 5, 6, 7 fires.
Yeah.
You pull up, it's a big 6-story New Law tenement, and you got 3 floors of fire, and this building is massive. You basically have 25 apartments going, and just, all right. And then, and back at that time, we had an arsonist, so fires knocked down. All of a sudden you hear, ladder 28 to battalion 16. Go ahead. 150 in Amsterdam. We have another column. All right. We'll send some units and pack up and just go to the next 4th alarm. It was crazy back then, but tremendous experience. I got transferred to Brooklyn pretty quickly. I did somebody a favor. And
were you trying to get home? Like, were you trying to get closer to home?
Yeah. I figured I wasn't ready to become a total maniac.
Yeah.
And because I'm driving from Staten Island, and it's 3 hours on a good day to get to Harlem.
That's right.
So it was a hassle. The George Washington Bridge, the only fun part about that is watching the idiots run into each other and keep on going.
There you go. Well, so that's how you would commute. You'd actually go into New Jersey, go up the turnpike, and then go back across the George to get to Harlem. Yeah. Makes sense instead of going up through the city. Sure.
Oh yeah, and back then the FDR drive, and I tried that one day and blew out a tire. I'm like, yeah, I'll go the long way.
Not a good place to blow out a tire.
No.
Brad, let me ask you this: coming from a police family like that, though, I mean, you knew that side of the civil service job.
Correct.
Fire for you, though, was it the stability of a civil service job in New York City in the late 70s, early 80s that was the appeal growing up in a blue-collar house like that? I mean, did you not care? I mean, because what did you know about the fire service? Did you know anything?
I never even seen a house on fire.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, basically the rule in the house was you graduated high school. All right, you're going to college, you're paying room and board.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, you got me I want $55 a week. I'm like, I'll go to college.
I'm going to school.
That rule carried on too. So
nice. We're going to get to you. I can't wait to hear about your upbringing.
Yeah, so the old man put me through college. I'm only a semester short of a bachelor's in economics, but I have a business degree in economics and became a fireman. But it was if you're not going to pay attention in college, a 2.5 grade point average isn't going to get you far. A friend of mine offered a job in Campbell's Soup. I lasted a day.
Yeah,
up there, checked it out. And you get some suits mouthing off. I'm like, nah, this ain't for me.
Not for you.
Yeah, he's like, you're 21 years old. You're going to start at 55,000, which was crazy money in '82. No, I'm going to become a fireman for 22,000. I knew nothing. I knew about cops and the police stuff and all that. And it's funny because, like you said, I never even seen a house on fire. And the girl I was dating at the time, we're coming back from a wedding, and we're coming through Staten Island, coming down Richmond Avenue, and I see this vacant house up on a hill, and it's roaring. A couple trucks and engines they're already working on it. Suit, shoes, pull the car over, leave her in it. I trudging through the snow, and I'm just looking at it, taking in the smell.
Yeah.
And fireman comes by, he's like, get out of here, you can't be here. I'm like, no, I said, I'm going in the academy in 2 weeks. Oh, cool, come here. Bring him front door. The chief's like, what are you doing? He's like, he's going in the academy in 2 weeks. Oh, cool, come on in.
Nice.
They showed me how to pull ceilings. I'm in a suit and tie
Yeah.
looking at this, and I came
Well, they're
out.
not wearing much different. They're wearing jeans and a coat,
Yeah,
maybe, right?
yeah, a bolero short coat,
Yeah, right.
and the boots not pulled up. And it's funny. I remember I got back in the car. The suit was ruined. My face is dirty. I'm filthy, and I stunk. I sat in the car and look, and the mascara's running down her face. She's like, "You're out of your effing mind." I'm like, "That is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life."
This was the best date I've ever had.
Oh, it's like an addiction. It's like that first snort and you're done. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
And like I said, the academy is so short back then. It was the classic. Yeah, this is a fire truck's red, fire's hot. Forget everything. They'll teach you what you need. And like I said, they have a little concrete room. They put the oak in the barrel, shut the doors, get down, pull your glove off. That was the smokehouse. That was it. That's all the fire we saw. Next thing you know, I'm up in Harlem and the fire's rolling down. I got 2 burnt firemen, and like, this isn't what they told me it was going to be like.
But
and
that though is where you learn the job. Right?
Correct.
I mean, and that's the thing. And it's like, today we get so busy with what the check boxes have to be, all the mandatory training, safety stuff, check the boxes as we go. And back then it was, here's the basics. Now go learn.
Correct.
Right.
And you listen to the senior man, and we had a fire up there. I guess like only had 3 months on, and I wound up with the nozzle pull up, engine only, because ERS no contact back then. Pull up, the whole top floor is roaring. Throw a portable up, go on the second floor. By the time the truck got there, we're already stretching. So we're waiting, and we're on the 4th floor landing. The 5th floor, the stairway's got stuff in it. So we're standing on the side waiting for the truck to pull the stuff out. And I'm looking, there's no doorknob, and I could see the fire in the hallway rolling right at us. So like the guy behind me, Petey Morgan, little guy, awesome guy. I mean, I owe so much to him. I'm like, Pete. He looked, he's like, look at the chief, lieutenant. He's like, well, what are you waiting for? Push the door open and the fire's right there. And just, it's your classic tenement. You had a straight wall on the right-hand side. And Pete's like, put your right shoulder to the wall, don't stop. And, 2 hands on your shoulders, and he's just going. And they're setting up tower ladders. We come around, I'm hitting it, and all of a sudden, look, I can see the tower ladder. The floor's already burned through. Yeah. I'm like, and they're starting water. And Petey's just like, he said, be a turtle and don't move. Like, what? And he grabbed my helmet, pulled it down, and tucked his face underneath, and we got blasted. I mean, my coat was the first TC2, the first rubberized one. And I had to bring it back to Corns the next day. It was all burned.
No shit.
All cracked and everything else. But the whole point was,
go ahead, please.
Yeah, this classic senior guy, make like a turtle. Like, you can't hear that today. No. Did you have your hood on? Did you have everything? I mean, didn't have a mask on.
This is pre-S. Were you wearing SCBA at that point?
We had SCBAs, but I mean, it was so free burning and so clear.
Well, that's right.
And basically, oh, you want to wear that mask? You're a pussy. Like, oh no, I don't want it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I get it. I mean, that was real. I mean, you're looking at ordinary combustibles, right? You had a lot of natural, that the smoke itself was, those buildings weren't built like they were able to vent easily, right?
Wire laugh.
Yeah, and you're able to duck walk and get under that smoke layer, so you could get in pretty far without being on that mask. Well, very different today for sure. There's nobody turtling and holding their plate. Guys are running out the door. We see it all the time.
Well, correct. And that's what I was just going to say. It's the whole idea was, this is how you learn to breathe.
Oh.
This is how you save yourself. Deal with it.
Yeah.
And I wound up putting out 3 apartments of fire. I turned around, my guys had already bailed out. They were laughing at me in the hallway. And but it was such an old school. It was such a different tradition. My Proby patch came off my helmet that day. 3 months on the job.
Yeah. But I mean, that's it, man. They're setting you up for success when you have people like that you can lean back on. And that's why, like, you look at today where people talk about, the lack of leadership, the lack of senior men, the lack of this, the lack of that. I mean, there is something to that. I push back a little bit all the time when we use that as a crutch or a way to just dismiss what's happening and we're not willing to put the work in. but there is definitely something to that. Ray, you can speak to this. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. Like, I think, we talk about it all the time in everything, in work, in the training world, like that lack of senior guy and that lack of just the knowledge that those guys, that generation had. There's such a generational gap, I think, in the fire service today that we're missing that piece. Like, that's, if you look at the big puzzle of today's fire service, that's the piece that's missing, is that generational gap that we lost a lot. And between the decline in fires and the increase in emergencies and the focusing on, like you hit before, like, yeah, everything now is just a check mark, and we're so hyper focused on these little aspects of the fire service and not the big picture, that we've gotten away from the true real world tactics. Like, we've gotten away from the stuff that's going to save your life, not the classroom stuff that, hey, this is what you need to know. It's what's going to save your life in an emergency. And that is such a far gone experience that there's this much of it left.
Yeah, it's instinctual, right? But the problem is, Ray, and I'll say this, right? Your father just talked about knocking down three apartments of fire, right? When's the last time you or I knocked down 3 apartments of fire?
Yeah. It's uncommon. It's the timer's shorter, fires are hotter, fires burn weirder.
Yeah.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
I remember a fire not too long ago, within the last few years, where it had a really good head start. We punched it, made a good stop. We got in, we're making progress. We had some water supply issues, and so we had some time to hang out in the hallway. And I grabbed a couple of the younger guys that had been on for a few years. I said, come here. I rushed them up the hallway to me. They came up where we had the line, and I said, I want you to stand here when we have no water. I want you to watch the fire behavior. I want you to watch it reignite in this room, come up and across. I want you to see how it comes down the hallway. It's coming over our heads. We're waiting for water now. We're waiting.
How it travels, watch the direction, moves, and breathes.
How often do you get to do that in a real environment, right? We could do it in a burn can, we could do it in an academy, but it's not real when there's not ordinary combustibles in there. And so it was such a learning experience, not just for them, but even for myself. All these years, I get to like sit there and watch this because we had nothing else to do but wait and watch. Yeah. It was
a TikTok video. They light the corner of the room. And see it right across. I sent it to a bunch of people. They're like, "Oh, that's awesome." I'm like, no, you don't understand. Yeah, I do watch TikTok videos. The old guy does. I see you laughing.
It's amazing. I love it.
No, they really, there's some ridiculously good stuff. And this thing is rolling across. It's a perfect rollover. And people are like, "Oh my God, that must be amazing." I'm like, no, you don't understand. Idiots like me used to sit there and watch and wait for it. They're like, why would you do that? Like, there's no sense killing it until you can appreciate it. Like, what? Because it's an amazing thing to see.
There's something about that, right? I mean, we all do this for many different reasons. The love of it, though, is certainly a big part of it for all of us, right?
It's magic.
Yeah.
Sometimes you look at it and it seems like magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nature. It's nature at its finest. I mean, people like sunsets and beaches and all this stuff. Like, fire's a piece of nature, man, and what it does and everything about it it's nature. Yeah,
it's power, it's intent, all of it. Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. I mean, I think that's how a lot of us become infatuated with it, and how some lose their ways and go to the other side. I mean, it becomes hypnotic in a way. It certainly can. Ray, take me down the road a little bit more with your career then, because I want to jump over to your son also and get a little background on him and so on. So from Harlem, we went to Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, I went to a 241 engine.
Okay.
I did 2 years there. Then I went across the floor to 109 truck, which, I mean, that's always my favorite piece of machinery.
Power ladder or rear mount?
Single axle, Seagrave rear mount.
Did it have the phone booth?
No, it was the next model above that.
Got it.
The ones with the phone booth was so horrible. Everybody loved the phone booth, but you're sitting there and it was like a bus. The steering wheel is here. They sounded better than any rig in the world.
Yeah.
They didn't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And they were horrible. But the next
ugly beauty, man.
Yeah, the early 80s was my favorite truck. Single axle, throw the levers, 2 jacks down, nothing. 30 seconds, you're already up on the pedestal. And So I was a backup chauffeur for a long time.
Okay.
And I got injured, and after I actually had surgery, they were trying to put me out, and I kind of caught the right doctor, and he's like, "Oh, you want to go in front of the board?" I'm like, "No, I want to go back." He's like, "What, are you out of your mind?" He says, "Give me a pension." I said, "I'm 32 years old. What am I going to do?"
Wow. Yeah.
He's like, "All right, well," he says, "I've been waiting 20 years for a guy like you to ask to not get free money. So give me a doctor's note." So I called up my surgeon. I told him, "Listen, I'll transfer to Staten Island, go to a slower company, and I just need a letter." He's like, "All right, cool." So I'm back the next day with this letter. Got full duty, stopped in 109, emptied my locker, and then I went to rescue.
Yeah, because that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, we did less calls. It's just all fire duty and emergencies.
Oh my gosh.
So then I went to rescue until I got hurt in at the Flight 800 crash.
Late 800. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about that, but let me ask you this. Back then, right? So what are we talking, like mid 80s, late 80s for Rescue 5?
1990.
90. Okay. So what did the SOC program look like in 1990 versus what it is today? I mean, I have to think that it's
It was changing then.
yeah.
You know, in the 80s when Ray Downey was
Yeah.
really building everything. You had to be a giant. You know, these 6'3" gorillas,
Sorry, Ray.
big guys.
Yeah, I'm out.
But he would have been a confined space guy, which that's what I was. I was one of the smaller guys compared to some of these guys. You know, back then you had to have a skill, welder, electrician. You know, Charlie Driscoll was the captain of Rescue 5 at the time. He was originally a cop who carpooled with my father in the 50s. So he'd been on me for years. And I actually saw him at a funeral. He's like, "I need you. Come on, it's time. 7 years I've been chasing you." So, but he knew I had the automotive. I do heavy collision work. I build cars.
Yeah.
I run heavy equipment. I can frame. Yeah, I was one of those guys. I had a little body shop, and I would do repairs, brake jobs, you know, minor dents and stuff. And like somebody would call me up and say, "Hey, we're building a big deck. We need a couple guys. So we're doing an extension." All right, cool. And I'd shut the shop down for a week and go frame or side or, you know, just whatever, because it was just fun to just do something different. But in the meantime,
What it was back then. I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, I had a lot of skills, which caused me some issues my first night there because I guess I thought who the hell I was, but that's all part of it. You know, but
that learning curve, right? I mean, it's you know, that's the one thing that I think is really interesting, and I think it's something that is an issue in the fire service today. It's like guys get a little bit of experience and then they go to another company and they have a hard time backing it down and becoming a little more humble to learn the lay of the land, and they come in pretty heavy. It's not the best move all the time.
no, it's and to be able to keep your mouth shut and you're the senior guy, you know, sitting there with 11 and a half years on the job and experience and a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. I was injured and, you know, I'm all by myself here, and, you know, everybody thinks it's funny. You're going to get the golden parachute. You're a piece of crap. And you don't hear from anybody, which kind of set a bad taste in my mouth. And it's no disrespect to 109, 241, greatest house, you know, out there. I walk in the door today, I go to their functions and I get treated very, very well.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just, it was time, you know, which explains kind of his personality a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, so I kind of want to, you know, jump in here because that was the 1990 is when you got back to Staten Island, which was your home borough. Ray, what year were you born?
I was born in 88. So he was in 109. My first memories as a like young, like 2-3-year-old.
Sure.
He made a massive grab one night. So like my first vivid memories of the fire service is news cameras in our house as a kid and him holding me on his lap, being interviewed by news cameras and
CNN.
Yeah, CNN and stuff like that. Yeah. And then when he went to rescue, I was, you know, 19, so I'm 3 at the time. And yeah, that's how I kind of came into that life of just a lot of news cameras, a lot of injuries, and a lot of just more bad days than good days in the fire service from when I was younger.
Don't mind me. I'm writing that down. Well, there's lines that catch me during episodes, and more bad days than good days. And, growing up, I mean, Ray, I got to think growing up, right? One, I know how I put my father on a pedestal and I looked at him as Superman. This guy could not be hurt. He couldn't be knocked down. He's as strong as they come. I'm sure you had very much the same belief in your own father, and yet you probably saw a lot of struggles growing up.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, from those early memories on, it actually it turned me off. There's pictures of me when I was 3 or 4 wearing his gear. Like one of the greatest pictures I have now is I got his rescue helmet on, wearing his turnouts in our kitchen in Staten Island. And we love the picture, but that's kind of the last memory I have of really wanting to be a fireman until much, much later. Because all I saw from him was him wearing, he got he had to have major eye surgery at one point. So for months he was wearing an eye patch and was in and out of surgery. When he broke his back at Flight 800, I found him on the floor laying there calling for help at 8 years old. Yeah,
call Uncle John, I can't move.
Yeah, seeing the guys have to come to the house to pick him up to get him into an ambulance, and then seeing the ambulance take him away from home. And like I have all the good memories too. Like we can talk for days about the good memories,
sure.
The Christmas parties, stuff like that. But from my first memories as a kid to being, when he officially retired, like I remember his retirement party and just the sad atmosphere it was, because he wasn't done, and it was taken from him and he was forced to retire. So I looked at that and I kind of at 8 or 9, I was like, why the hell would I ever want to do that? Like, I don't want to be a fireman, and there was a period of my life from like 10, we moved out to Jersey at, I think I was 12 or 13.
It was 24 years ago, so you were 11.
And you come out to Jersey from Staten Island, big culture change, and I didn't know the fire service was really a thing. 9/11 happens, and again, another big memory.
Yeah,
I lost him for 2 weeks. I lost all of my family. He's not close with his brothers and sister. So my uncles and everything like that were firehouse guys. Uncle Donnie, Uncle Harvey, Uncle this, Uncle that. Like those were my family.
Yeah.
And 9/11 comes around. He's gone when the first plane hits. I don't see him for a week, probably, like until I actually physically talk to him. So being a 12-year-old kid going through that 9/11 process, I don't know if he's alive or dead. And then he comes home and he's a ghost. Literally, the night he came home, covered in ash, woke me up and I thought he was dead. I thought it was a ghost. So that imprints in your mind. And then for a year, 2 years, all we did was go to funerals. Me in my little suit at 12 years old. My godfather passed away in the trade center. My godfather was rescued too. I'm that kid holding my godfather's helmet because he didn't have kids, walk in front of his casket down the street. It was stuff like that. Like all I remembered was pain and suffering just growing up in the fire service. So when I was 13, 14 and kind of starting to shape my life, I looked at him and I'm like, hell no, dude. I'm going to join the Navy. I'm going to be a fighter pilot. I'm going to be Maverick, Top Gun.
He despised me at that age.
Yeah, we didn't get along.
But it makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And I think so many guys that grow up in a household like this, where their father's on a very busy urban department where he's in and out and he gives everything back to the job, there's going to be absolute resentment built in as a kid. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
At what point, Ray, at what point though? So you're talking, younger age, 8, 9, 10 years old, right? And then up through. At what point though, because I had a lot of this too, not so much for the fire service. I mean, some of it, my father missed things for going, firehouse was a priority for sure, but it was also, he ran his own business and I resented a lot of that. But what I did find though, is as you grow up and start to really understand the sacrifices that he's making, you kind of come back around to understand. And all of a sudden you have this profound respect for the man.
Yeah.
When did that happen for you?
The big transition was I turned on my 16th birthday. He had joined the volunteers pretty soon after 9/11 and rose through the ranks, became a volley lieutenant, volley captain, which again, at the time, he's missing my lacrosse games, and stuff. And I'm like, there's this firehouse stuff again. And, so 16, I turned 16 and he comes to me and he's like, well, come to the firehouse with me. And I kind of pushed back a little bit. I really didn't have an interest in it. At the time, I was dead set on going to Annapolis and becoming a fighter pilot. Like I was all in, full throttle. That was my path I was walking at the time. He brings me to the firehouse, puts me in gear, and was like, what do you think? And I'm like, it's a chance to hang out with him. And I got to see the younger guys at the volunteer firehouse and kids my age looking at him with admiration and like this god amongst men. And I'm like, that's my dad. Like, he's not some god. Like, what are you? And then
he's crazy. He's not.
Yeah, people started telling me stories about him, and I'm like, I got to see this shit for myself. So he puts me in gear. We join together and kind of start going on a couple calls. Well, then the first time we go to a fire, I'm still a junior too. It's not even my first fire.
You're 16 years old.
Yeah. So I'm watching him take this crew and just knock this thing out of the park. They pulled a lady from the doorstep. They're pulling dogs out, and it happened to be a classmate of mine's house. Like, they saved this girl's house that I was in school with, and she thanked me a couple weeks later for it. That's where I started to really get the idea. I'm like, wow, they're doing something a little different over there. And then I got to continue watching him do that stuff. So my focus really started coming away from the military and the whole being a pilot thing. He sat me down one day too and was like, listen, you kind of fucked up school. So the whole Annapolis thing isn't going to work out. We kind of got to figure something out here. He gave me the same statement. When you turn 18, you're either paying rent or you're going to school full time. And I'm not going for you to drink and party.
Yeah, you're never going to split an atom. So just might as well get a real job.
There you go.
So
Ray, let me I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So just to wrap that up,
Yeah.
We sat down together. I was, very passionate about service to the country, and I knew what I wanted to do. Tried to join the Marine Corps. He shot that down multiple times. Like, recruiter in the house, all he had to do was sign the paper, and I was gone to Paris Island. So we sit down together and we say, all right, let's make a deal. Marine Corps recruiter gives us an Air Force recruiter. We sign up. Air Force recruiter says, hey, why don't you try to be an Air Force fireman? I'm 17, need him to sign on a dotted line. He looks at me and goes, is this what you want to do? And I said, absolutely. And off I went.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
Ray, I want to ask you this. How often or how much did you protect your kids? Because you're not going to bring it home. You could have the worst day in the firehouse. Some guys bring it home. Some guys put it in a bottle. Some guys hit their wives. Some guys disappear for the days between their shifts. But when you're involved with your kids and so on, I mean, you hear Ray talk about this, and I'm sure you've heard that conversation before about how it affected him growing up as a kid, right? I mean, and now he looks back at it and understands the sacrifices and the individual you are. But for you as a father, it's got to be challenging too, right? Because you want to protect him from the real life struggles you're having, especially at that younger age, right? A tough night at the job, a lot of protection built in.
It was more in my head protecting him from himself. Because I realized the bar was here for him. It was way up there. And I realized it back at one of those funerals he was talking about. He's in his Air Force uniform. And it was right after Phil Ruvelo's book came out. And he read it, and they were in the church. We're taking a break, and there's Phil Ruvelo leaning against a car. I'm like, hey, you know that guy? And he's like, oh my God, it's Phil Ruvelo. And Phil heard him, and he looked, he saw me, he's call you back, hangs up, comes over, gives me a hug. Who's this fine young man? And Phil told him, he's like, you get on this job, you don't call him, you call me. I owe your father a debt I can't repay. And he's like, what the hell kind of debt would you owe him? I'm like, it's a long story.
Yeah.
And on the way home, he told me, basically, he's like, I never want to walk in your shadow here. I would not take that job.
It's hard.
which was it was a little hard hearing that. I'm like, but you could have anything you want. But then after a while, I started realizing, yeah, he's seen too much already.
Mm.
So
this is right after Iraq too. So I'm 19. I'm fresh home from Iraq, and
So you were deployed, right? You went
Yeah.
to Iraq. Okay.
Yep.
At 19, still a kid.
Yeah, very much a kid. I actually, and it's funny, the day I deployed was January 7th, 2008.
that was the day John Martinson died.
Mm.
Picture bringing him to McGuire, walk in, and they had one Fish, was his name? The guy from the Bronx?
Ish.
Fish. Guy from the Bronx, he's he's like, hey, he gives me a little salute. He's like, sorry for your loss. What are you talking about? And they were like, you don't know? I'm like, no, I
Wow.
really drive him. He says, yeah, and New York lieutenant just got killed. I'm like, oh, what's his name? Johnny something. I'm like, Johnny, nice guy? But how'd you know that? I'm like, grew up with him. One of my closest friends still on the island. I hung out with Joe LaPointe, the guy that does the ceremonial unit and all that.
I met Joe. What a great guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Joe, we high school together. And
oh, really?
Yeah, there's a guy that has a GED. And he told us point blank, I am going to be somebody one day. I'm not going to cruise like you assholes. And he's the man. He is the man. Yeah. He's one of the label. I'm Sunshine. So now he's Sunshine Jr., according to Joe LaPointe. Great respect for Joe. I mean, what he's done for the fire department, and he made his own way. After 9/11, he just got promoted, and funeral going on, it's disorganized. Next thing I hear his voice, hey, I don't pay attention. And Sal Casano, who knows us all, used to fix his car, and he's going to be the commissioner. And he's like, we got to make something to get him to organize these guys. And created ceremonial unit. Build it, Joe. They gave him the tools, and they let him build it. And that's what the ceremonial unit is today. I mean, he's the number one authority.
Yeah.
On line of duty funerals, and so it's a lot of stuff like that, and this is what he had in the house growing up, all these different guys, and it's
big shoes.
Realize that he's got a very high bar, and so he's trying to do things now as a volunteer, and I got to keep on reeling him in. Next thing you know, we're in the basement, toe to toe, going at each other. I'm the chief, you're not. And he hated that statement. Or if I park his ass on the bumper, sit there and don't move, and the Jackson cops come walking by like, hey, you got yelled at again.
Yeah.
It's
one of the first fires we went to as fireman and officer together. He was captain. We're the first two engine. And I'm thinking like, oh, my dad's in the captain seat. I got the nozzle, man. I'm set. We get out, garage is ripping, extension to the second floor. He turns around, and I'm with all my buddies. We're all young, ready to go. You on the first line. You grab the backup line. You go in. Raymond, go get the exposure line. Sit on the outside. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a great fire, and you just put me on the outside. And then we talked about it later. Oh, what'd you learn? What's the importance of that? And this, and I didn't realize the grooming that was happening at the time, but man, I was pissed.
Building structure. I mean, when you think about it, I just want to, I get it because I lived all this, right? Yeah. I want to go back. Ray, you forged your own path though, when you decided not to be a cop. And then your son is watching the upbringing he's having and watching what the fire department does and how you built your reputation and foundation with the FDNY. Those are big shoes. He's got to find his own path. And, it's hard for a kid to do that. I had to do the very same thing. And I ended up going into the family business. I ended up being a volunteer fireman. I ended up doing all these things that followed literally in my father's footsteps. And on top of that, I am my father. I mean, we are very much identical in so many ways, but I had to find my way there.
Yeah. It's when he says the bar was set high, like, I don't think he ever realized how impossibly high that bar was.
That's the other side. Yeah, right.
I started realizing what these medals hanging on the wall were. Like, I used to, he had one grab one night, and I say one grab. He rescued 17 people from one fire. He set the record for Brooklyn for for rescues out of fire in one night. And that's when CNN and everybody interviewed him.
Okay.
Never thought anything about it. But as I started to get older, like I go to the fire academy, I come back and I'm looking at these medals, Class A medals, scuba rescues, 17 grabs in one night. As a brand new fireman out of the academy, I'm looking at that going, for the first time in my life, I'm looking at him saying, how the fuck did you do that? Like it just seemed impossible.
I live with one of those guys we all talk about, right? That can be challenging.
Yeah.
But you know what I love about that too, though, Ray, is it holds you accountable. Maybe the bar was set like way up here.
Yeah.
But it holds you accountable that at least you have to perform to the best of your abilities, and you do not get a pass, and you will not be able to be subpar or mediocre. You have to push yourself.
Yeah. And he was good about it too. He never wanted me to be like, one of the things I really remember from an early childhood when I started to get into this was I always used to say, how do I become better than you? Because that's always the goal, right?
Yeah.
Of achieve and overcome. And he always used to tell me, don't ever try to be better than me. Be the best version you could be. Don't be better than me. Be a good fireman. Don't try to be a great fireman. Be a good fireman. And then you will be better than me. That's always like he said it. He took the bar and he tried to make it attainable. And that's what I always remembered.
Yeah. I had a moment. I wish I knew exactly when that moment was, but there was a moment professionally and personally with my father where the one day I looked at him and said, we're at a different place today than we were yesterday. It was this mature moment I had that I was like, I'm going to be 47 in like 2 weeks, right? I'm getting old, right? And I'm like, I had this moment where I was like, man, I'm looking at him differently. I almost feel like we're equals now. Like we're on a different level.
As it feels to be your father.
What's that?
As it feel to be your father.
Tell me about it. Are you kidding me? My kids remind me all the time. You're just like Grandpa. Grandpa would say something like that. I'm like, shut up, get out. I'm like, no more. We're not having this conversation.
Exactly.
There's something to that. And it's like, I'm so grateful for all the hurdles, all the challenges, all the high bar raising, all those things that I had to deal with as a kid. I'm grateful for it now.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to, that moment you're talking about, it's the moment you realize you're not chasing a shadow anymore. You're not chasing ghosts. The moment you realize that you're trying to live up to that reputation in that moment. You're not chasing that ghost anymore, and you have to either become that ghost or become your own person to set your own bar, set your own reputation. That's that moment when you can look at them, for me, looking at him saying, I am so proud of the career you had.
Yeah.
And him looking at me saying the same thing and I'm having, that's when that moment clicks and you're like, wow, I get it. Like I get this concept. I get what it's about. Like I finally understand.
Well, you can see it through this conversation because you're sitting here talking about things that maybe 5-10 years ago wouldn't have been as comfortable to talk about in front of your own father, right? Where you talk about your upbringing and the ups and downs and all that. But you're at this place now together that you guys can sit down and have this conversation with me, which is just awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And that's really what I wanted to get to with this conversation today was talking about the upbringing and understanding that dynamic between the two. Because Ray, I got to think that your father pushes you every single day, whether it's him physically or mentally, or it's his past or the reminder of his accomplishments on the job push you to be better every day.
Oh yeah. I mean, even, I call him on good days. I call him on bad days. Bad calls, bad shifts, even when things are down in the firehouse. And there was a point last year, 2023 was a very difficult year for me personally. And I reached out to him at one point and I was like, man, I'm thinking about taking like a break, like a 6-month mental break just from the firehouse. Because I hate going to work. I hit that peak, not peak.
Hit the wall.
You hit the wall. And I didn't know what to do. And I called him up and I'm like, what do I do? And he goes, take it. Don't take the 6 months. Take a month. See how you feel. And I ended up taking about 2 months away from work, using vacation time and sick time and kind of just doing a mental reset. But it's exactly what I needed. And having that kind of leadership and, just fatherly advice to lean on and to know like he's been here, he's been in these shoes, he's felt these exact feelings, and to have that, you can't put a price on that.
And it's much harder too for what you guys do, because like where he is, it's the only house.
Yeah.
I've just transferred.
Yeah. Well, and that's a big part of a lot of the conversations that I have with guys across the country.
Yeah.
They feel like they're stuck.
Yeah, you can't transfer, and everything has a price.
Yeah.
You know, and for every action there's a reaction. You know, I mean, yeah, Joe called me sunshine, ray of sunshine. I was a pain in the ass, and it just got worse and worse and worse because just get more and more frustrated, you know, and seeing the knuckleheads survive and the guys that cause all the problems. And you know, I try and explain it to people now. It's so different. That gentleman I told you about when I was a rookie up in Harlem, Pete Morgan. We had a guy in the firehouse, crazy ex-Marine. He drove me nuts, and he threw something at me in the kitchen. I went to go take a poke at him. Next thing you know, him and Chief Bauer dragged me out. They're in the day room. Like, first of all, you can't hit him. He's an idiot. Second of all, you're a probie. You can't hit him. That makes you a bigger idiot. So I'm like, I don't. What am I supposed to do? He said, Pete, explain to him about the rule of 10. I'm like, the rule of 10? What the fuck are you talking about? So Pete's like, all right, here's how it works. 100 guys in a firehouse. I'm like, all right, 10 are idiots. I'm like, okay, I get that. Now take those 10. One guy's a superstar. You're trying to fight the superstar. Everything you do will be influenced by 10. The rule of 10. And I do some crisis counseling, and I teach that all now. I've explained it to him. I said, you can't, because that 10% drives me nuts. You know, I'm sorry. It's not my fault. I become part of the 1% that opens their mouth and always doing something, but that's who I am. That's who I became. When I did betray my father's ideals and become a fireman, he made me promise one thing. I'll always do the best I can. It's partly because he was injured twice line of duty by a drunken fireman running into his police car while they were cooping in it, as they called it.
Right.
You know, he's like, don't become a piece of crap and this and that. And I realized after they explained this whole rule of 10 thing, that's exactly what he was talking about, just in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the way the fire service is today. 90% of the guys are great guys. 10%, they're the ones that get in trouble. And there's always that one that makes the headlines. And unfortunately, in the public eye, that's what creates the image of us. You know, as I explained it to a woman last night who's very upset. Little girl died in Staten Island a couple days ago in a fire.
I saw that. Yeah.
And she was like, can you reach out to that fireman and see if he's okay? I'm like, he'll be fine. Firehouse will take care of him. She said, but I feel so bad, because she never thought about it until she talked to me. Yes, the family had a tremendous loss. They'll never recover, but they'll go on. But like she said, I never understood the pain that you police, fire, and EMS go through, see, and feel. I had no idea until I talked to you, and then I realized, you know, and that causes some of the rule of 10. Some guys break down. Some guys have had other issues in their life, and I get that. We all have our moments too, which that's what I said to him. I said, you need to clear your head. You know, you can't laterally transfer anywhere, so you're gonna have to fix it and, you know, figure out how to just, all right, fine. I'm just gonna sit here, keep my mouth shut. I'm not gonna do your drills or anything else. You do it yourself. And it's not in them. It's hard, you know, because it's not in me. Now, I walked in 69 engine, 22 years old. I mean, I had the space in my mustache. I couldn't even grow a decent mustache, you know, and like I said, I had to learn.
Yeah.
And I had these raging maniacs that are the best of the best. Dunn, Vigiano, they were all up there. You know, these are the guys that wrote the books.
Yeah.
You know, they're the guys that, I don't know who they were. You know, I'm just this dumb kid. You know, so I learned from the best. I'm that guy, and something weird's going to happen or something big's going to happen, I'm going to be there. It'll be my shift 9 out of 10 times.
I get it. Ray, I'm I'm glad that you recognized you needed to take a few minutes and refocus, because I think now the one good thing I can say now about the job, career volunteer, personally, professionally, people are recognizing when they need to maybe take a half a step back and refocus. And I think that that's important, because there are things that can spiral. And I think more than ever today, we are more aware of that than ever. Ray, I wanted to ask you, with your decorated career and being in a rescue company and all, A companies, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of tragedy. You're dealing with a lot of plight every single day and night tour. You said the firehouse will take care of them. The guy you were just talking about in Staten Island. For you, how'd you cope?
Not well.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm not trying to poke and prod and get personal,
No.
But what I'm getting at though is, like, guys that, we have to recognize that the way about how to deal and cope back then was different than it was today. And I know a lot of older guys in your position that have a lot of, I don't want to say baggage. It sounds negative in the connotation, but there's a lot that came with them throughout their career that they dealt with because they couldn't deal with it any other way.
Ghosts. We have a lot of ghosts in our back.
Ghosts. That's a very good way to put it. Thank you.
The best way I can put it is, yes, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, they didn't have crisis teams, crisis intervention. You think about it. In the 1980s, if a cop started breaking down and I feel bad, whatever else, they took his gun.
Yes. Yeah.
Now you're on the rubber gun squad and you're labeled for the rest of your career. It's kind of same thing in the firehouse. You don't cry in the firehouse. You just go shower, suck it up. And he was probably only like 2 years old, and we had a rollover on the belt because 241-109 was one of the only Hearst tools in the 80s.
Okay.
On this BQE merge. So we did a lot of extrication, which me as a car guy, I was in my glory.
Yeah.
But I come home, as soon as he can walk, he can barely walk, and I give him a hug, and I'm a mess, and she looks at me, she's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I had an accident last night and I deal with a kid like that." She's like, "All right, well, why are you looking at him that way?" It's not, but she was just mom at the time. She
get it.
Sure. She get it. And then all of a sudden now she's a nurse 3 years later in the burn unit going, "Oh my God, how do you guys do this stuff? You're out of your mind." Or like when I was a volunteer here, I took her to a couple fatal crashes. And she's like, "You guys are animals. You're going there with no equipment, screaming, hollering, beating, banging, ripping the car apart, yanking these people out, and ambulance goes up and they have Band-Aids and straws." I'm like, "Yeah, this is the real fire department. This isn't a hospital."
Yeah.
So once you look at that stuff, you kind of bring it back and go, we've always done the best we can. Like I explained to this woman, yes, that guy's heartbroken. He couldn't save that kid, but her destiny was created before. It's a timing and everything else, type of issue. We do the best we can. We want to save everybody. You pull up to an extrication and it doesn't look that bad. And you're looking at the person going, yeah, they're gone. Their body just doesn't know it. And they're talking to you, and then now you got to go home and deal with that. But how do you explain that to them? So for me, I would just go in my shop. Sometimes I would just come home. They would see me in the morning and I'd come home by the time they're going to school. I would just shut the door. It had no windows in it. And I would just work 16, 18, 20 hours.
I can name the cars he built at the saddest times of his life and what era that meant to our lives. The 69 Chevelle, the Novas, the Mustangs, the Malibus,
that was my therapy.
Yeah. I mean, and you had that, Let me ask you this. I mean, I know you retired through injury, correct?
Yeah.
So, and then it was during Flight 800, which was one of the most notable tragedies to happen in New York City in decades, right? Yeah. And so would you mind just taking me down that road a little bit and explaining like what that was and your actions that day? I'm just curious. We haven't really talked any stories, if you will, but I'm curious about a guy that wasn't ready to retire, got forced to retire. And I'm interested in that story.
Yeah, what it was is the scuba program we had wasn't quite ready for what we were going to do out there.
Okay.
We go into East River
Mhm.
reservoirs at 30, 40, 50 feet. We're certified to dive, but we went out there with all good intentions. I got called back. They deemed it a recovery. They pulled everybody back. I went to the firehouse and went home, went to sleep. Next thing I got a call, come on back. And so we went out there, and it was a couple of days of jerking around. It isn't quite as black and white as they painted it, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
So this was, I guess, the 6th day into it. They've been working on the gear, and we had some gear issues. It was older stuff that wasn't supposed to be that old. Me and Bobby Harron were the 3rd team that were going to go down. The first 2 dive teams had problems and couldn't get down. We got in the water, and Bobby only went down about 5 or 6 feet and had an issue. He thought his hood was riding up in his mouth, but didn't realize that he had a bigger problem. We straightened it all out, and we went down. And it's funny because they talk about squeeze in the suit, and it basically shrink wraps on you every time you go down a fathom. So I never had squeeze before, and I tell you what, at 85 feet, you thought somebody was digging their nails into your arm. Like, okay, this is squeeze, got it. We adjust.
Is that how far? That's where it was? 85 feet?
No, we were 125.
Oh, really? Wow.
It was deep.
How far off the coast? Like what are the, so, I should have done
it was 10 miles off the East Mauritius.
It was 10 miles off.
Yeah, it's actually in the beginning of the Gulf Stream. So it was a little clearer than what they said.
Okay.
You probably had 30, 40, 50 feet of viz, depending on what you're going on.
And this is recovery?
Yeah, we were tasked to go down. It was a row of seats, and it was a 300-pound guy still strapped in the seat. Because we know that for a fact, because the Navy went back down on our coordinates and got him the next day. I could see it, but I mean, the ocean floor looked like somebody took a lady's purse and just dumped it out.
Wow.
All sorts of little stuff. But we got to the bottom, and I was actually a free diver, which is not quite regulation, because we're all supposed to be umbilical and tethered, AGAs. I was just free diving with all the other stuff. Bobby was tethered with comms, and you're supposed to turn to each other, show each other the gauges. It's classic scuba. Okay, good to go. When I went to turn around and show him, he waved me off, and he was fumbling. I'm like, shit, this is gonna go bad really quick. So I was doing like a quick scene search, and I heard him scream. And when I turned around, his face was purple, and his eyeballs were actually touching the AGA. It was like sucked to his face. He had a full primary and secondary shutdown. So he's trying to hit his inflator to go up. All I heard is and him screaming. So I was lucky enough, I was able to hook into his belt where he was tied off and pull him back down by his deflator. By this time, he knocked my face piece half off my face.
Jeez.
So now we're both in trouble.
Yeah.
So I just hold him, like, you grab, you exhale, you blow, straighten it out, readjust, got all the water out. It's only a few seconds, but it's enough where he had stopped fighting. He was out now. So now I'm trying to inflate as fast as best I can, because I would have missed him and he would have shot up. He would have been dead instantly. He would have exploded. I was able to get him up to about 40, 50 feet, and then it was just dead weight. So now I'm holding him with my one arm, and I'm trying to inflate, and I just can't get any more air in there. And he's head and legs down. Looks dead man pose. But water was clear enough where I actually could see Richie Euler from Rescue 4. He came in the water. Cliffy Stabner had the comms. They didn't know what the hell happened to Bobby. He screamed, and nothing. The other diver never even entered the water. He's like, no, because they'd seen a 50-foot whale probably about an hour before we went down. A couple days before, John Norman was going on the Navy boat. And he came back. He's like, you guys are out of your effing minds. So like an 18-foot great white out there, because they were feeding on what was out there. And so whatever happened on the boat, I don't know. But Richie got to me, and I think about it, and I laugh because he came right to me because they thought I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And he looks at me, and he's like, I'm okay. It's him. You see the bubbles come out, like, fuck. So Richie grabbed a hold of him, inflated, and we shot him right up. And it was like, pulled it off his face, and he actually started breathing again, but it caused air embolisms in his brain. So he was badly injured.
Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned the squeeze is because we got him on the boat, and it was on the cane. So they're flying in, and when we peeled his gear back, you could see the bruising on him, like zebra stripes. And there was many accusations made, whatever else, because Bobby had some personal issues, but it just total failure. It's one of those things. The gear failed because it was old, should have been replaced, but that money went to other programs, which is what they did back in the day. The city only had so much money, and so we triaged him, and they calmed me down. They checked my vitals. I'm okay, and I went up to the front of the boat. I'm sitting in front of the pilot house talking to Harvey Harrell and FBI agent. And listen, the FBI agent, he turned and walked away. So Harvey, I move over a little bit, and as I leaned over to get my scuba gear off, they crashed into the same sandbar the guy hit the day before. But we did it at full speed this time, and I got thrown back first into the railing. Harvey said my feet hit the back of my head. I laid on the floor paralyzed for 5 minutes. I mean, it's a feeling that you can never describe. It's just hot, and I'm on the floor. I'm looking at Harvey. I'm in tears. I'm like, I'm paralyzed, dude. And Harvey's like, no. But it came back. But it was a classic broken back. The disc was into my spinal cord a little bit. Got Bobby in. My legs came back a few minutes later. After 5 minutes, I was able to sit up. I did walk off the boat 20 minutes later. We walked Bobby off the boat. He went right to the hyperbaric chamber. They gave me a couple of days off, and then went back to rescue. And I told John Ferry, I'm like, I can't do anything much right now. He's like, no, take it easy. So we did a scuba drill. When I went to pick up a scuba setup, I had no legs again. They heard that all the equipment hit the rig. I'm laying on the ground. So that's when they found out, after a couple of days in the hyperbaric unit, in and out, and did an MRI, and my back was destroyed.
Mm.
But yeah, it was a legitimate New York City Fire Department scuba rescue, but we don't talk about it. It is what it is.
Did he survive?
Yes. Yeah, he's living in Saratoga somewhere. He got married, had a couple kids. I mean, I haven't seen him in years, but I heard he's doing okay. He's got MS from it, I think.
Wow.
But it's better than the alternative. I think we're both very lucky. We were trained very well by Phil Quattrochi and John Emma. And that was the end result. When they investigated it, they couldn't figure out how the hell I did it. And it came down to I followed my training.
But to get your mask back on, to get the ability for you to stay conscious and alert down there, getting your focus to get your mask back on to be able to get out of that predicament.
Right. And to be able to bring up a 200-pound dead man, basically, because he wasn't inflated. And I guess I didn't really think about hitting his inflator. I was I'm at 40, 50 feet going, this is how it's going to go. This is where I die. Oh, if I don't let him go, it was tough.
What's it like to sit next to your father and hear a story like that? I'm sure you've heard this story 100 times.
So it's actually kind of ironic too, because this was such a huge part of his story and a huge part of his life that at the time, like we talked about before, I never understood. As I got into my fire service career and kind of started hitting a couple of plateaus and several goals, one day I looked at him and I'm like, I'm going to start diving. I need to understand, because it never made sense. I didn't get what happened to be that deep. Like, that was part of my fire service, like at the time, my portfolio that I didn't understand. I didn't know what happened. So I sit here today as a master diver because to me, that was inspiration. I needed to go through the training, and I needed to put myself down there 120 feet deep to understand what he went through, to understand him. And it was just an obsession that I needed to know what it was like, what he went through down there. And
It's intimidating.
yeah, the ocean is a different animal, man.
It's a humbling place.
Ocean is a wild place.
You know, Ray, the Rays, I think, so is the fire ground, though.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, go ahead.
You think about going to a really good fire and you're a little turned around and you're trying to figure out how you're going to get out.
Yeah.
You know, and do I give a mayday? You know, how am I going to, you know, is this where it's going to be? And it was that type of situation. And, you know, you're 125 feet down.
Yeah.
You know, it's like jumping without a parachute, you know.
But I think a lot of it has to do with how you hold the job with the respect that you have for it, right? Understanding that we're a piece of the puzzle, a part of the equation, and we're there to hopefully potentially make a difference, whether it's saving a life, putting a fire out, making a rescue, whatever it is. But we're a part of that bigger picture, and sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes things go south. And I think that's where it's so important that we have this humbling respect for what we do, whether it's a bullshit alarm to the best fire you've been to. Yeah. I think you have to maintain that level of respect for what we do, because that's how you're going to keep yourself in the mindset that we need to be in. I mean, I believe that.
I agree. I mean, I reinforce it at work. You know, I'm one of the senior guys at work, and you know, I try to take my crew and my tour, and we read about the NIOSH reports, line of duty deaths all the time.
Yeah.
I try to hammer it home because I'm like, guys, this is the life-saving skills. I can't say that I've lived this, but it's on paper in front of you to put yourself there.
We need to know
put ourselves in these spots and know what these guys went through, what went wrong, what we could do to prevent this in the future, and maybe save your life one day. You know, like that's like we talked about in the beginning, that gap we're missing. To me, that's how you bridge it. You
yes.
take what's given to you.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, we can't throw in a towel and say, hey, we're missing this. Oh, well, we got to find ways to combat it. We have to find ways that if we don't have somebody in our firehouse that can help us or tutor us, or somebody that has just a little more street smarts or experience hands-on, if you're not getting that influence, go find something else that can at least somewhat fill that void.
Yeah, we live in an age of information and technology where everything's right at your fingertips.
Yes.
So, and I mean, for me, like and there's other ways to go about it too. Like for me, the obsession with his injury, that was a drive to go figure it out and learn everything I could about that, to maybe I could prevent one day that happening. With fire injuries, you know, what can I learn to try to be the best version of myself, so that if that situation ever arises in front of me, I can have all the tools in my toolbox to prevent and fix that.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Look at all the books that you read. Like Vinny Dunn writes a lot of great books, and it's all information from the safety chief. As a safety chief, all big fires, tragic fires, whatever else, the incident report goes to him, and he's saved all this and he compiles it. But even all your operating manuals, like we had engine operations, ladder operations, PAIDs and stuff like that. And it's all, every single thing in that book is either from a mistake, an injury, a death, or something that somebody does. Like we had a captain in the house, he did garage doors. He actually wrote a PAID, which is basically an operating guideline.
Right.
Garage doors. Now, if your garage door and the spring breaks or whatever else, or you force the door up, pair of vice grips right by the wheel, doesn't move. Something as simple as that. And so it's all simple little things, complicated things. And it all gets broken down. You know, everything that we do, somebody paid a price for somewhere along the line, or learned a hard lesson from that. And that's, you know, and like I said, that's what's lost now, because the senior guy can't tell the junior guy what to do, can't yell at him. You know, I mean, I got called a fucking idiot more time in my first 5 years in the job than my own mother did, you know, and she was pretty good at it, you know, but that's, you know, that's the beating that you get verbally. But then bells go off, get on the truck, and it's another chapter. Move
I
on.
gave a kid the other day a nice verbal whipping, like shot one or two pretty stern lines with laser beams coming out of my eyes. He looked at me like he's never been spoken to that way before.
Probably hasn't.
And he
The
hasn't.
nerve of you.
And that's right. And so afterwards, out in the street, when we were done picking up, pulled him aside, and like, explained why I did what I did. But this is the part of it that is newer, is having to now follow up on it. Right. So it's like me, when I was growing up, you would get put in your place and it would be hard feelings for a week or two, and then you come back to it and there was never talked about again. Now you do that, you ruffle feathers, but you have to now catch them after the fact and be like, hey man, come over here. So let me explain why I did what I did. Let me explain what I was saying to you, right? Let me break this down for you. And you almost have to find a way to communicate with them now on a level one step down from where I was originally in the conversation, to kind of let it sink in for them to know it's okay. Like,
it's New Jersey Civil Service captain's test, man. Like that follow-up, you miss that, you lose points on your captain's test because it's such an important part of that chain now, man.
yeah, it's and I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It is different, right? But I think to push this job forward, we can't always rest on the laurels of what we did yesterday. We have to be sure that what we're doing today is done in a way that protects the integrity of the job. And if I have to take an extra 3 minutes after giving a kid a verbal lashing to break it down for him when we get back to the firehouse or out in the street, then that's what I have to do as a senior guy to pick up my game to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to set this kid up for success. Because years ago, the skin was a little bit thicker, you'd be able to take that and bounce back from it and be better for it. And now today you have to give that reassurance and affirmation that, listen, man, yeah, I just gave you a ton of shit, but you're going to come back stronger from this. And I want to tell you why. It's just, we have to go that one extra step now. Which
that verbal judo is truly an art form that you have to develop over time.
100%.
It's
100%.
It's such a learned skill that, it was one of the harder lessons I've ever learned too, because it used to be that way. Like I was used to that military mindset where I have sergeant stripes on my sleeve. I tell you what to do. You don't ask how. When I say jump,
get it done.
I carried that over into a young fireman career, and I got my ass handed to me because I was cocky, arrogant, stupid, and I had a mouth. And it took a long time to learn. I need to learn how to speak to people, not just below me, but equal and above to me at the same way, and how to correlate what, if I'm speaking to a person above me, I need to use my verbal judo skills as a pathway to make, if I want this truly to happen, the goal I'm trying to attain, if I'm speaking above me, equal or below, that's 3 different methods that I need to communicate with.
Yeah. And when your father was in the firehouse, they always had that guy. Like, we need to get this. Okay, go to Vinny's going to help us get that. He's the guy. He's my guy. You need something? I got a guy. He's the guy. And that guy is the salesman. And I talk about this regularly with a lot of my content. I'm going to be putting out more on this topic. So I'm so glad we kind of jumped into this. We're missing that guy today. We need to teach, as much as we need to teach our future leaders, our officers, the guys that ride the front seats, even chiefs now, and so on, where we need to make sure that the experience and know-how is equal and on par with itself. We also need to make sure that these guys are salesmen. Like, some of the best company officers might not be the best firemen, might not be the best tactically and operationally sound. They can do their job, but the one thing they can do is they're a salesman, meaning, and I don't mean that detrimentally, I mean that in a good way, meaning he knows how to talk to Ray. He knows how to talk to Jeremy. He knows how to get a message across or to get something that we need. He's the guy that's down at the shops getting us a new saw because he knows how to sweet talk the secretary who gets you into the tool locker. Like, that's the salesmanship that we're missing today in most firehouses. And that guy is a pivotal role in the success of a company and in their people.
Yeah. Go one step further.
Do it.
You also, the verbal judo, like you said,
Love that.
helps you. Yeah, I do. I like that too.
That's good.
But it also helps you on the bad scenes too.
Yes.
Think about it. We just segued into the fire where this little girl died. It happens all the time, all over the country, and it's sad. It's not a failure. We did the best we could, but you know personally as well as me, we always blame ourselves.
Of course.
Had I been a little quicker, had I done this, had I done that. So part of that is also teaching you how to fail, deal with it, because we're going to blame ourselves. These kids can't handle failure. You had to just got to go out there and rub his little butt and tell him, no, don't be mad at me, you know. And it's sad because if you are actually a real fireman, you're going to go and see horrible things.
Yeah.
Horrible situations. You're going to roll up in a car with a family on it that will never recover, or see a kid in a car and you know the family will never recover. You know, and I don't know anybody who could justify that, you know, all right, well, we screwed up and, you know, we had a delayed response and no, we blame ourselves for everything. And I noticed doing the crisis counseling, it's getting harder. These guys take it more and more personal because they don't know how to deflect it. They don't know where to put it. You know, Father Judge used to hang out in a firehouse, and he was such an awesome guy. I mean, he was regular as rain. You know, pass the potatoes, asshole. Well, fuck yourself. Sorry, Father. No fucking problem. Give me the potatoes when you're done. He was a Franciscan friar, and he would talk, and he always, you know, we never really caught on because we're not always the sharpest pencils in the box. And all of a sudden, Jerry Callahan would call me up and say, "Hey, we're gonna have a guest tonight." All right. And there's Father Judge, and he actually sat us down one day, and he's like, "All right," he says, "just remember, you guys are all assholes." He said, "Ray, you're my favorite." I'm like, "Oh, so I'm the biggest asshole you got to mess with." He laughed. He's like, "It's a love thing," but he said, 4th Avenue, 75th Street. What happened there? Well, we had a fatal here. We had a car crash there. It's right. This 3 and 84. What? Yeah, we had this. He said, "See what I just did?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "You guys remember everything." So I learned very early. Harvey Harold taught me, don't look at their faces, and it makes it easier. I don't see their faces for some reason. I've learned how to block it out, and it helps. But like he said, the reference is one exact time when he said it. He said, "You found that guy in the room?" "Yeah." "And he was dead?" "Yeah." He said, "I'm sure you think if you would have found him sooner." I'm like, "Yeah, I missed the door twice. You know, maybe that 5 minutes would have made a big difference." So he said, he says, "Here's what you got to remember, Ray. Your brain is like 1,000 rooms. It's rooms and rooms." He said, "You have a room for everything." He said, "You now have your dead room, your victims, your guilty people." He said, "And you're going to go in there and you're going to introduce them and you're going to dust them all off and you're going to put him up on the shelf with the rest of them." I said, "Yeah, but," like, he says, "Knock it off." He said, "You will remember. You will always remember. You guys remember everything."
Yeah.
You know where to put it. And that's the unfortunate part. You can't explain that anymore. You know, there's nobody out there telling these stories like that. And, you know, and it kind of struck a chord last time. She said to me, "Can you reach out to this guy? It's not my place. I'm the old retired guy." You know, and I truly do hope that the firehouse will take care of him, because, you know, we all get together, we drink, we tell war stories. You know, people are like, "Oh, they are bragging again." No, it's therapy.
Yeah, that's it.
It's how we decompress.
Yeah.
You know, that's when we're allowed to be weak. We're allowed to get on so and so. You know, hey,
Well,
you suck the chauffeur, drive a little faster next time. You get it out. It's done.
Well, I'll tell you, Ray, this is my therapy. I get to do this with cool people like you guys. I mean, I get to meet people all over the country. I get to talk about the job. I get to hear the stories. I get to, you know, put my opinions, insert them where I feel I want to. I mean, this is my therapy. And for you guys joining me today, it's just been awesome. Ray, before I go though, Ray the third, you have gone all in on the fire service. You've come from a childhood and upbringing of resentment to an understanding, to an appreciation and respect for the job. It's so much so that you do a ton of training outside of the firehouse. I know you work with Bobby Eckert and Eckert Fire Tactics. I know you're one of their guys, and I know you're a regular with them where you do a lot of hands-on for them. But the passion you have, it's exciting.
It's been a long, interesting road here. And you know, when I got on with Bob, I actually went back and forth with him a couple of times because I never felt like I was ready. I never felt like I was good enough to be part of that crowd. I mean, those guys are the staff on EFT
Yeah, they're
is
aces.
it's some of the best individuals I've ever met in my life, and they've truly saved my life in more ways than I can ever say out loud. I mean, Gordon, Joey, Bobby, Jeff, those guys have truly saved my life, like physically, mentally, and spiritually. When I got on with them, that was another level of the fire service where I never thought I would be able to achieve, but the respect and the humbleness that I feel being able to be part of that makes me so energetic and driven
I love
that
it.
it's fuel, man. It's rocket fuel that I love being able to put what I've experienced. You know, I've had a really cool ride in the fire service from growing up to hating the fire service, seeing every bad side of the fire service that there has been, being part of the greatest traditions of the fire service. I've gotten a small taste of every single bit of it. And to be able to be part of that group and to purvey that back into the world makes me feel like I'm doing my 1% to give back, because I don't ever want to see a kid struggle, because I've been there and I've struggled and I don't want to see that. I want to fix it.
Yeah.
So
You're doing good things, man. And you know, I talk about therapy. You know, I get to do this, but you guys get to sit together, have an unbelievable mutual respect for one another, father and son. I love that because I do it. I do it with my father, and I appreciate those moments. We just had a big moment in our family this week. My father was recognized, and the nature preserve here is named in his honor now in our town, which is just a huge, huge thing for us. And our legacy will live on forever in our town now with his name on that. And it's just one of those proud moments I have as a son and you know, a brother. And I just, that's what it's all about. And I think the best message that comes from this today was the fact that we were able to pull this together. Ray, you and I have been talking about doing this for quite a while. I had to put it off a couple of weeks ago when we had those heavy storms that came through, flooding and all that. We were out running calls all day and all that nonsense. But, you know, ultimately, guys, I'm so appreciative that you took some time out of your day just to hang out with me today and tell some stories. And Ray Jr., thank you, brother. I appreciate everything that you've done for the fire service, your storytelling. I think your message today is powerful, and I think it's going to reach a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I also think, too, that the legacy conversation between you two and talking about, Ray, your upbringing in a fireman's home, and, you know, it's going to hit a lot of people in a lot of different ways because so many of us lived that lifestyle. It makes for a really interesting conversation. And something that concerns me in the fire service more than ever is how many firemen's kids are not becoming firemen anymore.
Yeah.
And that is something that is super prevalent in the fire service. I often ask myself, why aren't these guys, why isn't this guy's kids following in his footsteps? Like, what is it about it? Did we turn them off from it? Do we not talk about it enough? Is it just so different now? Are we just promoting the white collar, computers, marketing, business, all that? I mean, we're missing out on the next generation of legacies coming in because a lot of these kids in firefighters' homes are not becoming firemen.
It
And
doesn't have the star effect. Grew up with John Wayne, you know, when my age, and Clint Eastwood and stuff like that, and it was very simple. And then now with the, I hate to say it, but the video game generation, they don't give a shit. The heart's not there. That's the difference. He grew a heart. He saw it. He saw what it took. You saw what it took. Your father taught you heart.
Yeah, he did.
Not teaching heart anymore.
So that is a good point.
It's a tough point, but it's a good one.
It is. Yeah, There's so much to that, and that's a whole nother
No,
episode.
that-
You can unpack
Yeah.
that for days.
You can load up the fire department psychologist with that one.
Yeah, right. Well, guys, thank you. Thanks for joining me today. We've been going for quite a while, and it's just been a lot of fun. You know, Ray Jr., I would love to, can't wait to meet you, shake your hand, and just thank you in person for joining us today. And Ray, thank you, brother. I appreciate our friendship, who we are, you know, and you know, the beginning, fun story, the beginning. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things, man.
No. We've had a weird.
You know what?
That was a strange path.
You know what it is, though? It's built on one thing: doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And what you did was truly, you know, and how I knew the person you are to be, and how I figured out who you were as a person was your actions that you took for someone else, and it was an amazing thing, you know. And it's stuff like that. The little things that'll never be appreciated.
Tear me up, man. Get out of here. You're tearing me up.
But it's true. It's true, man. Like you showed that it's not just, you know, competition, whatever you want to call it. It's you were a good man and you did the right thing. That's what it's based on.
Listen, that's it. At the end of the day, do the right thing. That's it. Whether wrong or indifferent, if it's right and you feel it's right, you go do it. That's it. So, guys, thank you very, very much for joining me today. What a great conversation. I can't wait to get this out. I think a lot of people are going to resonate with the message from today. We could talk for hours and hours, and I'll probably bring you guys back on another day just for war stories, Ray, because, you know, you're one week in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Staten Island compares to my 30-year career, so I can't wait to talk about that. But
brother, a 22-year-old kid getting relocated to 82 engine. Wait a minute, this is Dennis Smith's house. Like, holy crap. And everybody's like, so what? You know, what? You know, so it's the ideal, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was certainly a defining time in the American fire service, not just the FDNY. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you taking your time today. Ray, thanks for our friendship, man. I appreciate you as well. This was awesome. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to sign off the podcast. Stay right where you are, and then I'll come back to you when we stop recording, okay? Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast 2024. We're off to a big start this year. The Tremers, great people, firefighting legacy. That's what this job is all about. Do me a favor. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.